Welcome back to the Proven Podcast, where it doesn't matter what you think, only what you can prove. On this episode, Naveen shares how not only did he become a billionaire, but he made all of his kids billionaires as well. It's counterintuitive, and it's all backed on science. At the end of the episode, he shows us another proven way to heal your health and understanding that health is true wealth. He walks us through step by step in his, again, counterintuitive method. This one was one for the books. The show starts now. How you doing? I'm so excited to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being on.
Well, first of all, I'm just absolutely super excited to be here and just absolutely looking forward to it.
Thank you again for coming on. And for the couple people out there who don't know who you are you?
Well, it's really interesting that men define themselves of who they are by their business card. And I really find that to be funny. They always tell you, I am CEO of blah. And even after they retire, I'm a former CEO of blah, but they're just not, there's nobody. So I'm going to tell you that I'm an entrepreneur. I am dedicated my life to solving problems that can help billion people live better life. And I am an unbelievably supportive dad who really want not just to leave a better world for our children, but to also leave better children for the world.
And I have a cheat here because I've actually spoken to one of your children off camera already. So I already know the impact you've had. So you've become very, very successful. You're arguably probably one of the more successful people I've ever spoken to. But that's not what's amazing about you. You've done it for your kids as well. You've made your kids bazillionaires. You were just talking about your son. Can you tell me a little bit about the success that your kids have had?
Yeah, I think first of all, we have to redefine what success really means. Success can never be defined by how much money you have in the bank. Success can only be defined by how many lives are you able to improve while you're still alive. And at the same time, I tell our children the same thing, and I hope everyone listening to it will follow that. That is, your self-worth never comes from what you own. Your self-worth comes from what you create. So if you own a lot because you inherited some wealth and you haven't created anything, you're still a parasite on society. So just don't be a parasite, right? So do something that improves people's life. And I'm going to come back and tell you how to actually create a massive financial wealth for you, because making money is simply a byproduct of doing things that improve people's lives. So if you can do something, build any product, any service that can improve 100 million people's lives, you can create a $100 billion company. But you never wake up in the morning and think, what should I do to create $100 billion company? And that's really what it comes down to, is making money is like having an orgasm. If you focus on it, you're never going to get it. You just have to enjoy the process. People who chase it always become poor.
That is I've never heard that example before. So you've made multi-million-dollar companies. You've crushed it with Viome. I actually talked to your daughter, and she's crushing it because she came at it as a different angle. One of the things that she does, and I'm kind of stealing thunder from her show that we will be doing, was where you've created amazing things in Viome. She went in and said, "Hey, the world has not done all of these case studies, all these medical studies on women." For medicine for women. They up to the late 80s, they were doing it on men and then just changing the numbers, which just sounds wild to me. So you've raised kids that are just financially successful and that is a byproduct of other things you've done. So when you're going through and you're making these high achiever children, and a lot of people are just like, how do I get my kid not to be on my iPad, for God's sakes, let alone make them billionaires or decamillionaires or centimillionaires? What is the core that you started with, saying, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to change the ball game from the beginning. How do you deal with that?
Yeah. So let me give you a couple of things, because parenting is extremely counterintuitive. So basically, everything that we believe is good for our children, actually, we do it because it's good for us, and we are selfish people and at the cost of our children. And let me give you a bunch of examples of what we do that we think we're doing it for our children, right? So for example, let's assume you start a company, and God forbid you're extremely successful and you're still young and your children are young. The first thing that comes to your mind is, oh, I want to now spend time with my children. Children are young. I want to spend time with my children. Now,
Mhm.
that's extremely selfish thing to do, and you absolutely destroy your children. And here's why. Now, imagine what happens now. Look at from a children's perspective. You're telling kids money doesn't matter. And now when the kids are going to school, what do they see? Dad made a lot of money. He's still sitting on the sofa watching CNBC. I come back from school. What do I see? My dad is still at home watching CNBC and telling me, go work hard, go to your room, finish your homework. Hard work is what it takes. And I'm thinking in my own mind as a child, I want to grow up just like my dad, sit on the sofa and watch CNBC.
Right.
Right.
So it's counterintuitive.
Yeah. And instead, obviously, as you know, I started my first company, InfoSpace, and it's
Mhm.
in the dot-com era. That company went on to become a $40 billion company. Right. Now, it doesn't matter what the money is, but the point was, at that time, my children were all under 10. This is where I am. And I could have easily, so I wanted to now leave. Instead of sitting at home, I started the second company. I started the third company. Dad goes crazy according to our children. Dad wants to go to the moon and mine the moon for helium-3 for fusion resources. Dad, it can never be done. You're a successful man. Why do you want to go do that? And shows how is it possible. We became the first company to get permission to leave Earth orbit. The President Obama signed into the law called Space Resource Act of 2015, where we became the company that changed the law that anything we bring back from the moon, we get to own it. We became one of the 6 companies to get $2.6 billion NASA contract, right? Now, showing the kids that anything is possible. Now, Dad is now turning almost 60. Dad decides, oh, I'm going to go do healthcare. Dad, right into sunset. You have had an amazing career. Healthcare, you're going to get bloodied. You're going to absolutely be. There's no way you can ever change healthcare. Healthcare is not going to be changed. And we go out there and say, look, the future of health will be delivered at home, and the medicines of the future are going to come from a farm, not at a pharmacy. And we fundamentally change how healthcare is going to be done using data and AI. Now look at what children are thinking now. Children are thinking as they're growing up, my dad is not even that smart. By the way, for every children, I don't care who you are, how smart you are, in your children's eye, you are the biggest moron out there. You're a really dumb guy. You don't know a thing
Yes.
about anything. Dad, that was fine in your generation. That's not what the life is. And now they're thinking, my dad is not even that smart. And look at what he has done. Now let me show them how it can be done. And now they're taking on this massive ideas to show what is possible. Now, let me give you a couple of other examples of in terms of raising children. And I think that really crystallize what really about the counterintuitive parenting is all about. So, for example, when your children are young, we all want to read stories to our children. That's how we spend time with our children in the evening before they go to sleep. I realized, what if we can actually change that game and say, instead of reading them the stories, what if we co-create a story? So I would go to them and say, now, tell me a story about a monkey and a palm tree and ocean. And now they have to find a way to connect these things that are seemingly disconnected and come up with a coherent story. And now it's Dad's turn. All right, Dad, I'm going to come up with a really tough one. Tell me a story about this, and this. In their mind cannot be connected. Now Dad is trying to connect these things together. Guess what's happening? In their brain, what they're learning is everything in life can be connected if you find the right abstract way of connecting the dots. And they start to make the new neural connections that has never been possible. So by simply changing the way, instead of reading a story, is to allow them to imagine how to connect these things together. The biggest and the most important thing that I realized was, it's not about taking your children to the water and making them drink. It's about making them thirsty. And how do you make children thirsty? By giving them intellectual curiosity. So let me give you an example. If you have a son or a daughter, there's times they will look at something and say, Dad, look at such beautiful blue sky. And you look up and you want to encourage them and you say, yes, indeed, it's really beautiful. Now imagine what you have just done is taken away a beautiful chance to teach them intellectual curiosity. What if you say to them, the sky doesn't really exist. Sky is nothing but a figment of our imagination. There is a blue light that scatters, and we see this barrier called sky. But really, there is no sky. When we go from here to Mars, we don't say, Mom, I just passed the sky. There is no sky. And by the way, talk about the color blue, there is no color out there. It is simply the photons, electromagnetic wave that hits our retina, and our visual cortex is making up that color in our own mind. There is no color. What you have just taught them is that anything, even the thing they are 100% certain about, because they're seeing it with their naked eyes, what if it is wrong? And this is what you have now created, a child who is constantly willing to challenge the foundation of everything that people have taken it for granted. What if that is wrong? What if it doesn't have to be that way? And suddenly that intellectual curiosity allows them to constantly learn and constantly change the way people do things. Right?
So it starts very early on, is what you're saying. You're going through and you're saying, hey, instead of me reading you a bedtime story, we're going to create that. We're going to co-create this together. Now, you also talked about building empires because you've been radically successful. You've done things that for most people, one of those is a grand slam. It's a once in a lifetime. You've done it multiple times. How do you find the balance of being at home versus building empires? Because most of us high achievers understand that they're not around as much. How do you do that?
So it's not about the quantity of time you spend with your children, it is the quality of time you spend with them. So in a sense, if they know the most valuable thing you have in your life is not money, but it's really is your time, and you make that time available to them whenever they need you. And this is one of the rules that I have always followed. It doesn't matter who I am talking to, whether it is Bill Gates or Bill Clinton or the head of the states. It doesn't matter. If my phone rings and it's one of our children, I will take that call. It will never be a call that I would not take. And in fact, I did that when I was speaking in front of, as a public company, at a Goldman Sachs investor conference with hundreds of portfolio managers that own my stock, and my phone rang, and I said, excuse me, I made a promise to my son that I always take his call. Give me a second. I took his call and I said, Uncle, is everything okay? He said, yes. He said, would you mind if I called you back in 10 minutes? He said, yes, Dad, no, nothing important. That 10 seconds, our stock went up substantially.
Absolutely.
Because people in the audience says, here is a man who didn't really care. He makes a promise, he keeps a promise. That's a person we can invest in. I didn't do that for a reason. That's who I am as a person, that when I make a promise, I kept that promise. And to date, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. If the phone rings, I will answer that call. And that is about being available to your children in the time of their need, not constantly being there. And children feel now, it's, my God, my dad is at home again. I need to entertain him because he wants to play with me and I got other things to do. Right?
No, it's a game changer. So when you're doing this with your kids, my hallucination is there's got to be a different way you approach your spouse and your partner as well. What are the different rules? Because again, you have to have a solid foundation in order to raise the children. And the fact that you're successful financially and you're doing all these things, that's great. But if the core ecosystem isn't fully aligned, and there's so many people, divorce rates in the United States is close to 60%. What are some of the things you've done there?
Well, first of all, I've been married to the same woman for 37 years. So we have been married together for 37 years now. And our children are 35, 31, and 28. Right? So we not only have had an unbelievably great family life, unbelievably great set of children, right? And again, as you mentioned, this idea that people have that you have to have a work-life balance. This is fundamentally what causes people to go wrong. Work-life balance, when you ask for work-life balance, you have already concluded that those two things cannot live together. You only balance things when their things cannot be together. They are mutually exclusive. What if your life and work is a continuum There are days there is more of one, and there are days there is more of other, but there is never a balance. Anyone who claims that they have a balance, they suck at both. They work people think they don't work hard enough and they suck at work, and your wife and spouse thinks that you work too hard and enough time. So you suck at both. And the best is to really find the continuum. There are times your family needs you. And at that time, your family is the most important thing, and you're going to focus on that, and the work has to wait. And there are times that work needs you, and the work has to take priority, and the family just have to wait.
Love it. So what are some of the rules and some of the ways that you've connected, that you prioritize your partnership? Because
Yeah.
again, most people don't make it past 5 years, let alone 30 with Mazel Tov. Congratulations.
Yeah. So basically, again, going back and start to look at, more. Let me give you a couple of more counterintuitive parenting, because I really think this is so important, especially for the people who come from nothing. And most of us who build financial success, some are inherited, but 99% of us actually go out, work hard, and create some wealth for ourselves. But what happens is when we become financially successful and we come from nothing, our first thing that comes to our mind is, as our children are growing up, is I want to teach them value of money. When in comes summertime, I want them to go out, work at the grocery store or the gas station. I want them to learn how, what it takes to make money, and I want to teach them value of money. To me, that's one of the most narcissistic and sadistic thing to do. It says, I suffered, and God, I'm going to make you suffer now, right? Instead of saying, hey, look, I came from nothing. I was at the floor. I worked hard. I got to be here. I don't want you to go back to the same floor, and maybe you're smarter than me. Instead of coming up to be here, you'll come up to be here. But you know what? I'm going to give you a platform now, and you want from here to show me how you can go to the moon, Mars, and beyond. Because now you have a platform to jump from. And what that really means is slightly different. It doesn't mean you don't do anything. What means is, during summer, every one of our kids, I asked them, what is it that you wanted to learn, but you never got a time to learn because you were so busy with the school? So my youngest son says, Dad, I really, really want to learn about human brain. Now it's my job is to make sure they find an internship to learn about human brain. So I would call the Paul Allen Brain Institute. He said, can you please take my son for summer and just let him learn up everything about human brain, right? Or my daughter says, I really want to learn how babies actually develop in cognitive abilities. Great. I got her into University of Washington pediatric section so she can learn about how babies' cognitive things improves, right? So point was, it doesn't matter. Every summer, they went out and learned something they would have never learned. So it became all about taking time to learn, not taking time to make money. Because when you get children to start their life and saying, if I want anything in my life, it's all about making money. Rest of their lives, they simply chase money, not learning, not intellectual curiosity, not anything. And when you use money, you know what? If you want to do this, I'm going to give you an allowance for this. We never had that concept of allowance, because to me, what I'm telling kids is, look, money controls you. And if you want freedom, you got to have money. And what they're thinking is, God, all I care about is how quickly can I get money so I don't have my parents controlling my life anymore, right?
Right.
We said, look, all this thing is all of us together. Go what you think is necessary, but don't do anything that you think is not necessary, right? Is this something, if your brother or sister did, would you say, come on, really? What are you buying it? You shouldn't be buying that. And really, that's how we taught them, is to become responsible, not control them, right? Other thing that I think you will really enjoy about in the parenting is that as they were starting out, having a financial success where the dad has been financially successful, what I told them is that now you have a safety net. What that means is, doesn't mean you don't do. Now you no longer are going to play for singles. You're going to always go on a batting, and you're going to have your bat high. And every ball that comes, you're going to swing it so hard If it connects, that ball is going out of the ballpark. And if it's okay, if it doesn't connect, there's going to be the second inning and the third inning and the fourth inning. You're going to get plenty of shots at it, but you don't play for singles. You don't touch the ball and run. Those days are gone. And that's the reason every one of our children goes out and takes on the most audacious idea that says, if I am successful, it is going to help 1 billion people live a better life. And even if I fail, the things that I learned from it will allow me to build a company that will help 1 billion people live a better life, right? And in life, in entrepreneurship, this is my last lesson of entrepreneurship, then we can move on. There is no success, there is no failure. Everything that you do is an experiment. Experiment has an outcome A or outcome B. When outcome A happens, you do C and D. And when outcome B happens, you do E and F. And that's it. There is no failure. There is no success. Everything, that outcome allows you to take the next step. And that is what I'm talking about, is that even if you don't connect, you learn something to say, okay, now I know exactly what I'm going to do next.
So I love that you approach everything counterintuitively. It's completely different, because I was brought up with, okay, my parents made it here. You have to start from the bottom again. I'm like, oh God, and I've got to struggle to get back up versus here's the platform, go after. So it's counterintuitive. I've also learned that children don't listen to what you say. They watch what you do. What is some of the counterintuitive things you've shown them in your relationship with your spouse on how you guys have your dynamic? What are some things you've done?
So basically, again, so children, as you said, whether it is work or at home, they don't do what you tell them to do. They do what they watch you do. So if they watch you work hard, they want to work hard. Now, it's really interesting. If you are working in a corporate as a mid-level manager, and nothing wrong with it, I'm simply saying, and you're saying, wait a sec, I want my children to be entrepreneurs. Now, what is it they are seeing is my dad comes home from work every day, comes home, bitches about his boss, bitches about his work, and then he goes back to work the next day. What do you think they're learning? That your work has to suck, and it's okay if the work sucks. It's okay if boss sucks, and you suck it up and you go back to work. Now, if you really taught them and said, look, I hate this and I'm going to quit tomorrow and I'm going to go do something else. Guess what can flood? When shit happens and I don't like something, I'm going to quit. I'm going to go do something that makes me happy, right? And that is what entrepreneurship is. So I tell people, if you're not willing to quit your goddamn job, a safe job, and become an entrepreneur, don't expect your children to say, why are they working for Amazon or Microsoft? Not that they're a bad company to work for, right? But you're not going to become an entrepreneur because they watch you do that, right?
Right. Absolutely. So when raising kids isn't always easy. Sometimes there's challenges. Sometimes they're not perfect. Sometimes you want to tie them up with duct tape and tie them to a chair and leave them there. There are days where it's really tough. I love their counterintuitive for that. How do you counterintuitively deal with children when they're being children and you're having those nightmares and those struggles and you're exhausted and you're building your empire? You have this aspiration for them. How do you deal with the resistance and the days that are tough and the days where you're exhausted?
Yeah, so even if you are exhausted, remember, it doesn't take a lot. As like people say, it takes a long time to build a trust and it takes one time to destroy the trust, right? So it doesn't matter you're tired or not. You simply go back to your roots. And this is the number, if only thing you remember, just remember this. We always told them our love for you is unconditional, but our approval is not. Now, think about the difference between the two. It is never you have to wonder if we love you or not. If doesn't matter what happens, we'll be there for you. But I'm not going to say I'm proud of you. That's approval. So anytime when they did something, we would say, does not make us very proud of you when you do that, right? But we still love you, right? So if you do something when they're doing something, we simply show our disappointment to them. Never say, I'm angry, I am, and no, nothing. I love you and I'll always be there for you. So you never have to wonder if the home is ever going to be not safe. So home is a safe place you can always come back to, but not necessarily we are proud of you. And what's really interesting is your children may say, whatever, dad. But guess what? in their mind, they always want to do things that will make you proud of them. And your job is to let them know what makes you proud of them. So you tell them, look, in this case, I wish you didn't do this. I wish you did that. That would have made us so proud of you. And guess what? Next time they would do exactly that.
So in life, we all of us try to be proud of ourselves and
Yeah.
we try to do our best job that we can, but we don't always hit that mark. Sometimes we do things that we're not proud of ourselves. Sometimes we don't execute very well. And our children see that. Our family members see that. When you have missed the mark yourself, when you may have fallen below your desire of being proud, how do you explain to them, again, counterintuitively, when you show up and you're like, hey, I let myself down or I failed to act in a certain way, how do you connect with them?
I actually start taking my children when they turn 10 to my toughest meetings, my board meetings, my analyst meetings, even the meeting with some of the customers or vendors, which I knew was going to be the toughest meetings I'm going to deal with, and watch. And a child is watching me struggle and getting frustrated because I just can't find a way to get across my point. And that is what allows them to see dad is human. He's going to not get every time right. And he's going to, at times, he's going to get frustrated, angry. And even a time where I told one of my vendors, I'm so glad you're not next to the glass because at this point, my inclination is to take you out of here and throw you out of the
Absolutely.
window. And my kid is watching and say, oh my God, my dad is losing it.
Yep.
And my dad recovers and said, all that means I'm trying to tell you is that, we got to take a deep breath. I'm going to take a deep three breath. I hope you take a deep breath here and let's restart again.
Yes. It's like, I'm going to go for a walk. I'll be back in 5 seconds. Oh, give me a second. I want to punch you. No, we've all been there. We've all been there because we get frustrated.
And that's the point, is to have them watch you that, it happens. You're a human. You're not some abnormal human being that doesn't have these situations.
What are some of the counterintuitive things you've done and how, like things that you're like, I'm never bringing that in my home? There's this idea that people hate screen time. Like, oh, I'm not going to let them on social media. They're not going to be on this. What are the things you've done?
Now, so I actually never tried controlling that. We actually went from a divorce. I said, look, anything that you want to do, play a video game, go on a screen time, these are all the privileges you have for doing things that you are doing. Right. So if you are working as hard as you can and really succeeding at school, and doesn't mean you're all getting A plus, but it's about, are you putting the most amount of effort and you're getting the best you possibly can. So if they come back with B plus, it's not about B plus. My only question I ask them is, are you happy with it? Do you think this is the best you could have done? And if this is the best you could have done, I'm really proud of you. If you believe you could have done better, but you just didn't study hard, would you make a commitment that next time you would study harder?
All right. So what happens because again, it sounds like your kids inherited this ambition and people are like, oh, he's lucky. His kids are ambitious. But I think there's a balance between nature and nurture there. How do you instill this into them?
Very simple. Anybody who tells you is nature is completely hallucinating. And let me tell you why. The 90% of all the people you look at who are successful, their children, all of them turn out to be bum. I mean, very rarely. So if it was a nature, every successful people will have successful children if it was a nature. So by definition, if you're looking at the holistically of the society, you have to believe it is a nurture, or all of the successful people have successful children. So nurturing is all about, as I was talking about, really thinking about counterintuitively, about constantly a difference between encouraging them and teaching them about intellectual curiosity, always allowing them to think differently, asking a different question than what everyone else is asking, right? That asking different questions, allowing them to ask why and not get frustrated with that. Because even as an adult, what I learned is, if you want to get to the root cause of something, you want to act like a 2-year-old. But why? But why? But why? And that's when you get to the root cause.
So I love that you give examples and I love how much you love your kids. What are some concrete examples you have of those questions? Like, okay, you brought this in. This is
Yeah.
where it didn't work. Here's a question to ask. And you can remember an example with one of your little ones?
I can give you multiple examples as an adult. I've learned at it, and then we can go back to the with the kids also, right? So, for example, today every one of us will agree that one of the biggest problems facing humanity, the fellow humans, are dying from dirty water. Right? If you can give them a fresh, clean water, there's so many diseases that we can actually get rid of. And an entrepreneur will come along and say, you know what? I can build a straw with a nano filter, and you can take the dirtiest water. It will filter out everything. You can get a nice, clean nano filter water drinking just from a straw. And you're now saying, rather than asking, we have so much nice fresh water, where does it all go? And suddenly we realize majority of the fresh water goes for agriculture. And you start thinking, oh my God, if agriculture is taking almost so much fresh water, what if we can change agriculture to grow vertically? Aeroponic agriculture, hydroponic agriculture, maybe use lightly salted water for agriculture. Can we take all the fresh water and for humans? And then you feel really good that you're solving the right problem until you ask the next why. But where does all this agriculture go? Why do we have so much agriculture? Turns out majority of all agriculture is used to feed the cattle. Right? And now you realize, oh, it is really the cattle that are taking up the agriculture, they take up the fresh water. What if, instead of telling people not to eat meat, can we do exactly what nature does? Take a stem cell from a cow, or take a cow egg and take that sperm, and can we actually only grow the muscle tissues? If that's all we want to eat is muscle tissues, let's only grow muscle tissues and a fat. But you don't need to eat eyes, so why grow the animal? You just only grow what you want to eat. And that suddenly, not only that solves the problem of environment, because these cows produce so much methane gas, suddenly you have a lot of agriculture that you can feed humans, and you have so much of fresh water that humans can use. So by simply getting to the root cause of the problem, you realize a fresh water problem really is a synthetic biology problem.
So you just continue to say, but why? You
But
continue
why?
to be that 2-year-old until you get to the point you're like, okay, I got it. Here's but why.
And by the way, you can apply that to almost anything. So, for example, you look at the food and you say, if someday there are going to be 20 billion people on planet Earth, how are we going to solve world hunger problem? And every expert will say, oh, that means I have to learn to grow more food in the same thing, so increase the yield of the crop. You have to reduce the wastage of the crop that is wasted in the transportation. And they're going on and on about how to do that. And what if you simply ask the question, why do we eat food? By asking the question why we eat food, it changes everything, because you know now the only reason you eat food is energy and
Energy.
nutrition. Energy and nutrition. What are the different ways can you get energy? And suddenly you wide open the problem to solving it in a way that has never been possible, and now you would have never thought of it. And this concept is really so important. So I'm going to now go back and take this framework and apply that to how I apply a framework. Because a lot of times people think all these abstract things, I don't understand how would I do it if I'm starting something. So let me take an example of, so basically anytime you want to start a company or a project, ask yourself 3 questions. Why this? Why now? Why me? So why this is about, ask yourself, what if I'm actually successful in solving the problem that I set out to solve? Would it help a billion people live a better life? Right? And we talked about it, why that matters. So now let me apply this to a recent company that I started called Viome. So, right? So it's Viome. Viome set out to solve one problem, which is, what if we can actually understand what changes in the human biology at the onset and during the progression of chronic diseases? Because our thought is, if we knew exactly what biochemical activities are changing in your body before you develop a diabetes or heart disease or cancer or Alzheimer or Parkinson or depression or anxiety, if we knew that, we'll be able to diagnose them early, prevent them from happening, and God forbid, outright reverse them. So that was our fundamental thing. So first question was, what if we can actually solve it? And the
Mm.
answer was, would it help a billion people? Answer is 8 billion of us.
Absolutely.
Every one of us is going to suffer through that. So that's a problem. Why this check mark? Next question is why now? Why now has two parts. You look at the stuff and saying, never ask yourself how you're going to do something.
Mhm.
Ask yourself, what are the problems that need to be solved, but not how. The minute you ask how, and this is why most people who start a company and they're expert in their industry, they say, I don't know how to do it, and they just back out. In
Stop.
my world, they say, don't worry about how. What are the problems that have to be solved? So in this case, I said, look, to solve this problem, there are three things have to be done. You have to be able to digitize the human body, process the massive amount of data that comes out of it, and then use AI to be able to actually make sense out of it. And then you say, okay, the second part of the problem is you look and say, what changed in the last 3 years? But more importantly, what you expect to change in the next 3 to 5 years that will allow you to solve the problem at scale in 3 to 5 years. And this problem could not have been solved half a decade ago or a decade ago. That means you're not using yesterday's technology to solve tomorrow's problem. You're actually using intercepting tomorrow's technology to solve tomorrow's problem. And that otherwise what happens is you come along by the time you're ready to scale, someone comes behind you and you disrupts you because you're using old technology. Yeah? So now you're completely focused on what are the things. So now coming back to Viome example, we say, look, the cost of digitizing is essentially taking analog sample, which is saliva, stool, blood, taking analog sample and converting them into digit ACGT or ACGU, so your DNA or RNA. Now,
Mhm.
cost of that used to be tens of thousands, if not millions of dollars. Now, when we started the company, the cost was about $1,000. And we realized that it has come down, but it's still way too high. But we were absolutely convinced the way that things were plummeting, that in the next 3 to 5 years, it should come down to about $100. Today, we sit here and the cost is about under $5. So even though we were 10 times optimistic, it turns out we were 20 times pessimistic. And that's the power of exponential technology, that it always moves exponential curve, whereas human mind is always thinking linearly.
Mhm.
I'm going to just
Cool.
continue. So
Yep.
processing side, we realized the cost of processing was very high on cloud computing, $42. We assume it's going to be 10. We now came back to $1.50. Now, same thing happened in AI. We knew AI was going to be powerful enough, and there was no doubt. So we started the company. Now, the biggest change was the last question, why me? And this is the crux of everything. We talked about why me. Instead of asking how to grow more food, you ask, why do we eat food? In our case, we thought and said, look, what is the question that everyone is asking in the industry? And it turns out everyone was said, look, to solve this problem, you have to know about people's genes, your DNA. And now I'm thinking, wait a sec, I am no expert here, but I do know that your DNA never changes. So, in a sense, if you do my DNA test today and I gain 200 pounds, it's still the same DNA. I become diabetic, you do my DNA test, it's still the same DNA. Now I have depression and now I have heart disease, same DNA, and then I die. 100 years after I die, you look at my DNA, it's still the same.
Okay.
So DNA can't even tell you you're dead or alive, let alone are you healthier or sicker. So we realize the things that are changing are your RNA. And if you can measure RNA, it will solve the problem. I didn't know it can be done, or I didn't know how to do it, but we realized that will be the crux of the problem. Second thing was 99% of all the genes in our body don't come from our mom and dad. They come from these 100 trillion microbes in our gut, in our mouth, and all over us. And every disease, if you were to Google Parkinson's and microbiome, cancer and microbiome, depression and microbiome, obesity and microbiome, is connected to microbiome. And there were hundreds of companies doing microbiome testing. And my problem was, why is this problem not being solved if there's so many people doing microbiome testing? It turns out they were all asking the same wrong question. Every company to date, every company tells you what organisms are in Charles's gut. You have Akkermansia. you have C. diff, you have this, you have E. coli, you have these organisms. And in my mind was, it doesn't matter what organisms you have. What matters is what they are producing. Are they producing good stuff? Are they producing bad stuff? Because any organism can produce something good in one environment and produce something toxic in another environment. So when people take these willy-nilly and say, I'm going to take Akkermansia as a probiotic, it can help you or it can kill you. So if you Google Akkermansia and MS, it is the number one reason it causes multiple sclerosis, right? So same organism can be good or bad depending on the environment. So what did we say? Let's focus on what they are producing. Let's focus on the interaction with the immune system and we can solve the problem. And now, Charles, this is the point. Now, having done that, we didn't know how to solve it. I went to Stanford, MIT, NASA, finally found the technology at Los Alamos National Lab, where they were working on a biodefense technology to solve a problem around how to detect bioweapons. They couldn't care if there was a terror in our country, what organisms were there in the bomb. They care about what they express and how does it interact with the human body so they can create antidote for it. Guess what? Now, we took the same technology, got exclusive perpetual license to now analyze your body. So here's how it happens. You give us a spit of your saliva, you give us a finger prick blood, and you give us a touch of your stool. We analyze 100 million biomarkers, not 100, 200, 100 million biomarkers. We tell you your biological age, your cognitive health, your oral health, your heart health, your immune health, your gut health, all the nerdy stuff you want to know. And then we can say, hey, Charles, don't eat avocado even though you think it's healthy, but your uric acid is too high, is going to turn into a gout. Here's a science paper that shows that. Don't eat spinach despite Popeye telling you that it's really healthy. Popeye was not a scientist. Your oxalates are not being degraded. Spinach is very high in oxalates, you're going to end up getting a kidney stone. Or don't eat broccoli or Brussels sprout because very high in sulfate and your sulfide production is very high, is going to cause inflammation. Right? So we can tell you which food to eat, why, and give you a science paper, what foods not to eat, why, and science paper. And then we can tell you what other things that are lacking. So what other nutrient your body is missing? So we tell you need 22 milligram of elderberry, 79 milligram of amylase, 33 milligram of lycopene. So we walk you through every vitamin, mineral, herb, digestive enzyme, and we custom make that for each individual every month. There is no pre-made stuff. It's custom made for you.
So how long
Probiotic.
does
Please go ahead.
so when someone does this, because you're asking different questions and
Yeah.
you're getting very different answers, because one of the things I've learned how talking to you, because it's just a gift to talk to you, most people will get this answer. And then some people will get this answer.
Yeah.
You'll keep going and going and going till you get to source, because you're not
Yes.
looking for answers. You're looking for source, which is a completely different conversation.
Root
When
cause.
someone goes through them and they go with Viome and they
Yeah.
go through it, and I've done it a long
Yeah.
time ago, and now I need
Yeah.
to do it again. So
Yeah.
I'm going to reach out. We're going to be doing it again. If you go and you do this,
Yeah.
how long, or is each person uniquely different that they see some sort of radical change? Because you're not guessing anymore.
Yeah.
You're using it for each and every individually. How long does it take normally to see a change?
So let me give you some example. So we did a blinded placebo-controlled studies, and we gave people placebo or we gave them the personalized nutrition. In 90 days, we showed the people who had IBS, right, which is bloating, constipation, 64% of the people in 90 days
In
became
90 days.
90 days became healthy compared to 10% on placebo. Compared to 10% on placebo.
Okay.
Same thing on depression and anxiety.
Pre-diabetes? How about pre-diabetes or glucose resistance? How about
We just published a study on pre-diabetic people in 90 days. The A1C came down by 0.42 and they became healthy in 90 days. 90
by
days.
0.42, you said?
Yeah, 0.42 in 90 days. Right. And by the way, all we do is look at this. We custom make the supplements. So these are mine. It says not Naveen Jain. Notice that it says manufactured on. It was made for me 10 days ago. Right. And then you have these personalized probiotics and prebiotics for my gut. Right. Then we have these personalized oral lozenges. You can see my name on it, made for me for my oral microbiome. And then we have these personalized toothpaste. Think about it. Morning and evening, that, by the way, removes the plaque and gum inflammation and completely adjusts your oral microbiome. Because when you adjust your oral microbiome, guess what happens? It is direct contribution to diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer, and many types of cancer, and sexual health, by the way.
So it
all
just
oral health.
so there's so many people because again, my father was senior
Yeah,
vice president of Bally's Total Fitness. Your
yeah,
family was senior vice president of GNC, and
yeah.
they would just push out supplements, but none of it had this customized down to your RNA where we're checking your poop. I can tell
That,
you, no one at GNC checked your poop
and tell you
ever.
what, not just the poop. We actually
Right?
take your top of the digestive tube. Remember, your digestion doesn't happen in the stomach. Your
It's
digestion
like here,
starts in the mouth.
mouth,
So
yeah.
when mom used to say, slow down, chew your food. You know why? Because the oral microbiome
Started the digestive.
pre-processes the food so you can absorb the nutrition. Plus, it sends the signal to your body what is coming. So when you drink a diet coke, what's happening is your oral microbiome is telling pancreas release the insulin, and now there is no glucose to bind to. Now you become insulin resistant by drinking diet coke. So you're better off drinking a real coke because body knows how to digest glucose. Right.
Gotcha.
So what's happening is, so we measure your saliva. So you give us a spit of your saliva, top of the tube. We look at the poop with the bottom of the tube, and then we look everything around the tube, which is your blood. So your mitochondria, all of your immune system. That means every single interleukins. That means IL-1, IL-8. So every single immune marker, and then we are looking at all of them together to see what is going on. So we can say, look, Charles, we are not telling you to be vegan. You can eat red meat all day you want because choline and carnitine in the red meat, for you specifically, right now, not forever, is not being converted to TMA. And your liver does not produce enough FMO3. So TMA is not oxidized to TMAO, which causes the atherosclerosis, which is heart disease. You can eat red meat. But so what we learned, Charles, was very interesting. There is no such thing as universal healthy food. There is no food that's good for everyone, right? However, there are universal unhealthy food, but there is nothing healthy. Spinach can be good for you. And by the way, 37% of the people are harmed by spinach. 42% of the people are harmed by broccoli. 32% of the people are harmed by avocado. And here is my thing. I'm a vegan, so I can imagine, but red meat is good for 45% of the people.
Okay. All right. I need to do my Viome again.
Right.
All right. If someone wants to come in and they take it once, how frequently should they retest? How
Yeah.
do they do that?
So we actually just published a paper that shows that your microbiome changes in 6 months. So if you are really looking at the thing, your oral microbiome, your gut microbiome, and is changing every 6 months. So you should retest because the foods that were bad for you may actually be good for you.
Good.
And the things that are good for you may actually become bad because body is completely changing and adapting. So your stress changes your microbiome. Your sleep changes your microbiome. Your exercise changes your microbiome, right? And the food is the number one thing that changes your microbiome.
It's so it started with the kids, it's so counterintuitive, and I want to be respectful of your
Yeah.
time, but it's the counterintuitive questions that you ask your kids, you get your kids to start thinking differently, operating differently, and now we treat our health differently. Because
Yes.
to your point, our health is our wealth. Because
Yes.
I've talked about this for years. There are people who had polio who were paralyzed from the neck down. They had lots of time but no health. They wanted health above
Yes.
all that. And as a man who is exceptionally wealthy, not only financially, but also your experiences. And I met one of your children. I haven't met them all yet, but they're, wealthy there. And congratulations on your marriage. You're focusing on health on such a high level. Where does someone blatantly steal this from? Where they borrow all of this knowledge? Where can they go and start getting these tests right now?
Well, first of all, you can just go to Viome.com, V as in Victor, IOME.com. And the reason I have to spell, Charles, so you wonder, is Indians cannot pronounce the word V, but I still named the company Viome because I just fell in love with the word, what it meant. V means life, and omics is science, the science of life. And I said, who cares? I can pronounce it. Charles is going to actually say it in the right way.
It's Viome with the V, Victor, Viome. So, all right, so they go to Viome.com, they sign up, and then how quickly from the test to the result where they start getting the changes? Because I know everyone's going to start that 90-day tick.
So here's the thing. The minute you go to Viome.com, you get the test. The day we receive your test samples, within 9 days, you get the answer on your app, and it tells you every single food what you should eat, why, and a science paper for it. Food you should not eat, why, and a science paper. Everything that's happening in your body, from cognitive health to immune health to gut health to oral health. And then each thing we can tell you how to improve it and a science paper for it. Everything is connected to a science paper. There is no, oh, we told you to do so. There is nothing generic. Everything is made based on your gene expression. Right. So everything that you see there is based for you. And that's the reason why it is so effective that suddenly people feel better.
It's proven. It's based off scientific fact. It's nothing else.
Yes.
I can't tell you how excited I am to have you on. Thank you. We could continue to talk for hours. I know you've got to go, but thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it.
Well, first of all, Charles, what an honor and a pleasure to speak with you. And I really hope everyone out there go out and do something so crazy that when you tell someone you're going to be doing that, they think you're absolutely crazy. Because if people don't tell you you're thinking crazy, you're not thinking big enough. So go think so big that people think you're crazy. And just remember, there is no such thing as failure. Only time you fail in life is when you give up. Everything else is simply an experiment. So go out and experiment as many times as you want and never give up. And I cannot wait to see every one of the audience in here succeeding and going out and taking on audacious challenges. So our children and grandchildren are going to live a better life.
I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. And I really, really appreciate you.
Everyone talks about building companies, but Naveen proved that true disruption starts with building moonshot ideas that challenge the status quo. Stop chasing incremental wins, start focusing on bold visions that transform industries, elevate humanity, and leave a legacy far beyond profit.